You are listening to the North American Kings podcast, your traditional masculinity training ground. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski, founder of North American Kings LLC, a leadership development company based in Cincinnati, Ohio. As we all know, the man brand has taken an absolute beating over the past few decades, and it's our mission to change that. We're going to do that by helping you join the fight to reclaim traditional masculine values. Welcome to headquarters. Training starts now. Now, welcome to the show, everyone. It's a great day here. Let's get started. I want to thank everyone for joining me today because this is an absolute dream come true. There has been a lot of movement in the background in order to make this dream a reality. And for those who have spent their time and have supported me in creation of this dream, I will not disappoint while we get this thing going. So I mentioned we're not going to, while we get this thing going, what is this? The North American Kings is a leadership development company designed to help men reach their full potential. And you might ask, why is that important that men get extra help? Aren't they the ones with the resources available to them? And the answer is partly. Most leadership material was designed to help men be more effective at leadership. Okay? So, however, of all the trainings that I've ever been to, no one's ever really addressed the why. They've always addressed what. What are you supposed to do? What are you supposed to say? If those don't make sense to someone like me who's trying to grapple with and kind of control their manly urges, there's a real problem there. So if those don't make sense, the best trainers will isolate and help do exercises, and they will talk to you about some of these things, but no one really specializes in training for men. In group settings, especially in co-ed corporate trainings, they can't address the why in an efficient or a timely fashion. So for men, the why is incredibly important. Now, in today's social and professional world, misapplication of masculine traits can have long-lasting and devastating impacts to everyone involved. When a woman is aggressive in the workplace, and I've talked to HR people and I've talked to lawyers about this subject extensively, when a woman is aggressive in the workplace, it's usually shrugged off. There's a bunch of excuses made. There are trainings that they'll put her through that are designed to empower her. Just like in schools today, training and support is designed to help women catch up and close that education and leadership gap created by the patriarchy. But really, that's not the case. So unfortunately, because of this, men are being left to their own devices. Now, for the most part, we're figuring it out. And that's a good thing. But when we don't, the damage is incredible. Like Thor's hammer, we are capable of building great things or destroying everything around us. It's a fact of nature. Unfortunately, that's the case. So don't get me wrong, this program wasn't created to take women backwards. That's not what we're getting at. But I am trying to rebalance the scales. So go to any bookstore and see what I'm talking about. I have. And look at the women's section. Go to self-help, religion, philosophy. You're going to see rows upon rows of books designed to help women reach their full potential, designed to help women overcome whatever they're going through. Now look at the men's section. Now maybe one shelf in the entire place, two if you're looking at the book section for dads specifically looking to be like better fathers. I mean, I've been in that market. I've looked for those books. They're there, but there's not a lot of them. And there's a couple reasons for that. A lot of guys don't want help. Like, we're not supposed to ask for help, but part of that is a fallacy. And part of that, if handled correctly, can actually be overcome quite easily. So why me? One, I'm going to be very clear about this for the entirety of our relationship. I am not a psychologist. Okay? However, I am a professional leadership coach. I have spent years coaching people in leadership. I've been coached myself. I've been coaching those around me professionally for a very long time. I've worked for some of the biggest names in food manufacturing. So what I've been exposed to, I've been exposed to the corporate giants and how they do things, and I've also been exposed to how little companies handle leadership development. I've seen a lot of crazy situations in this series. You're gonna hear a lot of stories, right? It is a good thing that I want to get involved because I've been in this fight for so very long. More importantly, again, I've been on the front line since I was a teenager. I have survived. Yay. For those who can't see me, I'm a 6'1" guy whose weight has fluctuated between 200 and 240 pounds over the last 15 years. So by anyone's standards, I'm a big guy, which usually gets people attention on the subject. Now, I am not if we're talking about this battlefield for traditional masculine traits, the culture wars, or whatever you want to say. I mean, I'm not your military intelligence type making plans for you off in some place you've never seen before. I'm your blooded combat veteran, that sergeant on the field whose job is it to take newbies onto the battlefield and have them survive it. And that's what I want to be. I feel that not enough people have engaged in this campaign, and someone needs to lead the way tactically, because we can have the best plan out there. There are philosophers that you can get in touch with that are out there. I've tried to, and not enough people are leading the fight on the front lines, and I want to be that guy helping do that. And so here we are. What I'd like to start with is something paramount, and some of you may have been exposed to this already, and if you have, great. You'll understand this 10 times more for it. Now, before I get into that, when I'm coaching, a part of my role as a man to those around me as a teacher, is to be able to distill things down to their basic functions. And I do this as a training method all the time, because it doesn't just apply to mechanics. It doesn't apply to machinery, cars. It can apply to philosophy. This can apply to a lot. It does. Again, it's a multifaceted function. It's a multifaceted training technique, is to distill things down to what the intent is, right? And I call that a pure truth. This is not like the Bill Clinton, like, what is the definition of is? Like, this is pure truth. Now, pure truth, when exactly stated, there's no opinion there. It is simply objective fact, which objectively is actually very rare these days, and I understand that. But when I'm teaching someone how to operate machinery in manufacturing, for example, and something's going wrong, the first question that needs to be answered is whether or not the machine settings are correct. And there's a very specific reason for this. If they're not, that's either the problem itself or that's covering up the real problem. So we set the settings back to what they're intended to be, and we can actually go out and look and see what's now not functioning correctly. But when I'm taking an operator through this, the question is stated thusly: did you intend, or did you tell the machine to do X correctly? Whatever the task is. Now, the first time that this happens, every time they hear it, it's always met with this perplexed look. That's when you have them. They're off balance. They're confused, and now they're open to suggestion. They're curious now. There's something they weren't anticipating. Now, I'll repeat. Did you tell the machine to do the right thing? That's what machine settings are, correct? The machine doesn't interpret what you said, translate it to something, and then do it. It will do exactly what you tell it to do. Now, my operator is hearing this objective truth for the first time. It's irrefutable. That's why it's a pure truth. And there's no reason to doubt how true it is. It resonates. For some reason, it's like hitting a bell, just hearing it reverberate through the room. Whoever hears it's like, yes, I agree. Yes, let's do that. So I feel it's a service that I provide to be able to do this and distill things down for you. Now, this work has already been done in various places, so let me be clear. This, what I'm about to say, is not a Glenn Kowalski original. These are your core responsibilities as real men and women. If you're listening to this and you have a man in your life, be it a father, be it a son, boyfriend, whoever, brother, uncle, whoever, ask him about these things. And you might be surprised at the response you get. Every time I mention this in public who's not expecting it, every time I mention it, it's like, oh yeah, it's pure truth. They love it. So relax. There's only 4 core responsibilities. Those are provide, protect, teach, and discipline. That's it. Now, there are hundreds of different traits and virtues and characteristics that men need to be striving for, and they need to be demonstrating out there in the world. And believe me, I want this show to go on for years. So please don't think that you're going to somehow hear one podcast and you've got all the information you're ever going to need. It's definitely a great place to start, but I want this to go on for years. So we are going to dive into every one of these traits. We're also going to be talking to people who have also been in the fight here. We're going to be talking to some experts, lawyers. We're going to be talking to people who can help you apply these properly and also give you some intel for what's out there in the world currently and how we can deal with them. But even if one person's listening, like this is that important. Like I will be here for this one person, for that one person. So if you are out there on the battlefield alone and you're confronted with something that's off script that we haven't talked about, do yourself a favor. Try to distill whatever the discussion matter is into one of or a combination of one of these four responsibilities, these cardinal responsibilities. And when you do that, you're largely put in a much better position. Okay? Like I promise you, like this will work. So having said that, I can and you should be able to melt everything down to a combination of those. And I just got done saying that I didn't make these up, but we can see how they are applied out there both correctly and incorrectly. So unlike some other shows or books out there, I am not here to turn you into an alpha. You know, if you don't want to be, then don't. You know, I'm not here to tell you right or wrong. What I can do, though, you don't need to be a quote-unquote alpha in order to be a man. Now, the fact that you don't need to be an alpha in order to be a man, like that's a point that feminists, women, educators, and other institutionalists, they miss that. They like to paint this picture of this broken and tainted alpha male, and they want to cram every man they've ever met into that broken mold. And then they want to blame us for how they've chosen to see us. And those that don't fit into this broken mold are often told that they weren't meant to begin with, which on its face is destructive. Or they're praised, even worse, they're praised for not fitting this other's pre-perception of what a real man is, which in most cases is a woman. Right? They want you to be more feminine. They want you to be more like them. They want you to be more compliant, more docile. They don't want you to be seen as somewhat of a threat. They've completely mismolded. They've completely gotten the target wrong based on whatever preconceptive, you know, whatever their problem was with that dude way back when. Enough of people have said this is what a real man is, this toxic man, and it's simply not the truth. But we have somehow accepted the truth. We've just said, that won't affect me. Gentlemen, it is. And women, at some point, we've allowed that to happen. Okay, now this is everybody's job. Now, without someone out there publicly telling the world that they've gotten this wrong, how are young men, especially, how are young men going to grow confident enough to act like men in public? When did we become so scared? You know, we should be correcting the fact constantly. Now, I don't ever expect to be famous, you know, in this. Like the genuine mission is to help people out with this. Now, having said that, I don't think that there's enough people at like the height of popularity that are saying this out loud, but we don't need to be. If enough of us at the floor level, if enough of us start saying, "Hey, that's not right. We're going to swim in this direction." If enough of us do that, the current's going to change with us. We're just in a vast ocean. If enough of us start swimming in one direction, the rest of the culture will follow, or at least start flowing in that direction. We'll make some progress. Okay? So I'm not scared. And here's the thing. I'm not alone. There are other resources out there, and I've discovered since joining the front lines here. And I don't see them as competition. If they're in this fight with us, then great. The more power to them, the more power to you. Go listen to them. I see those resources as allies. So I encourage you to seek them out and support them. There is a market for these ideas. That's why I emphasize the need for someone to publicly speak about these truths, because people want pure truth and they can feel that something's off. That's the thing with men. We can see if something's wrong. We can see if something's not there. And if, especially if we're not improving ourselves. So again, this is not about being an alpha. This show's about improvement. If we can if we become more than what we were, if we've improved in some way, if you've heard this and listened and you thought, hey, I can go work out, I can get stronger, or I can support and provide for people a little bit more in these various, directions of life, then, we will ultimately start feeling better. We won't feel that pit in our souls that, something's missing, which is very important. And society is going to feel that too. We feel that we can feel that something's off in society right now. And that's something that we can fix by doing these things, by improving in these areas. Now, this is something that's been thrown off. Now, we've successfully been sectioned off from society, reduced to speaking about the importance of traditional masculinity in safe company. Now, if this were a battlefield, then we've been successfully isolated and moved to a tactically weak ground position. That's a losing strategy. Now, we may be back on our heels with regards to culture, but nature has a way of correcting itself. Now, I don't support losing strategies. I know that I'm going to get some feedback by someone who happens to stumble into this podcast that will say publicly espousing traditional masculine values and traits is a losing strategy. That's not the way of the world anymore. But it is. This direction that we've been going in is artificially created, and it's incorrect. So publicly defending traditional male traits and traditional masculinity in its purity and executed in the right way is not a losing strategy. Again, it is a pure truth. When applied correctly, men being the strong, noble leaders that we were intended to be, the benefit of that cannot be refuted. Now, a perfect example. I was invited to a bar in Wisconsin. Now, I'll tell you, my people in Wisconsin can make a bar out of anything. Now, this one happened to be an old Wendy's with like the nacho tray that some of you remember from the movie theaters. That was like in the drive-thru window, like they hadn't remodeled yet. It was a great place. It was a cool bar. Now, I'm meeting some old fraternity brothers and a bunch of other people. Now, we were there to celebrate, and I don't know if some of you younger folks know these. I mean, I don't know how I haven't been to the bar scene in so long, but what I can tell you, was like somebody won a quarter barrel. So for those of you who haven't been or haven't had the experience yet, like you can win like a quarter of a keg, like a smaller keg, and everybody gets all excited, like, oh my God, free beer, let's go drink, yay! But moreover, it's a reason for people to get together. And I was back in town. I was just moving back to town, so me even showing up was a bit of a surprise. Now, just to set the situation up, I'm friends and like on a great first name basis with half of the entire bar, but I didn't know everyone. So I was introduced to this one girl and I thought her name was something and it wasn't. Now, right off the bat, let me just state for the record, she was on the wrong side of wasted. Like she was not in a sober place. For kids out there, like she had enough. She had way too many alcoholic beverages. She had made too many adult drinks and was getting a little silly. So to introduce myself, I said, hi, so-and-so, I'm Glenn, nice to meet you. And I shook her hand. Now, I got her name wrong. And she asked me to repeat myself. Now, not knowing I had made a mistake, I repeated it. And then she forcefully corrected me. Now, I didn't know I made a mistake, so I didn't really take it seriously enough. I was kind of nonchalant about it. But I had reached out, I was shaking her hand, and we hadn't really lost contact at this point. Like, we're still holding each other. And she tries to like crush my fingers with hers. Like, she's got my digits with both hands and she's like trying to crush it. And again, if you can't see me, I'm 6'1", 230 pounds. And she's like leaning hard on this. And she realized it's not doing anything. And then she proceeds to punch me in the stomach. Now, let me repeat that. Like, she reached in and she punched me in the stomach. Now, here's the man part. Now, we exchange a jab or two. I asked her if she had hurt herself. She says no, because you're so fat. And I mean, okay, lady, whatever. But I stuck my chest out. I kind of turned away from her and I projected to the entire bar. And I said, "Where's the man responsible for this?" I'm like pointing like at her. And she's a little shorter, so I'm like pointing down at her. Now think about that. A woman in this day and age is being unruly, and the guy that she gets into it with wants to see the guy that's responsible for her. Every one of my brothers was grinning like ear to ear because, of course, I'm back in town and I'm just like they remembered. Like, remember, I am not unused to fights like this. But the reaction from the women was very telling. Their reaction was stunned, compliant, shock. Okay. And then they started pointing to the guy. Like, "We'll get him. He's right over there." So, gentlemen, hear what I just said. They did it. Proof positive. Nothing bad happened socially, economically. Men, when you hit people with a pure truth, it cannot be refuted. Right? I want to teach you examples like this so that you're armed for the future. Be vocal about your roles. Like, be who you are. Now, the reason I did that, clearly this woman needed support. She was wasted. And she wasn't alone. She was with a gang of her girlfriends, and they were surrounding her. I came with a few of them. So why was she so out of control? I asked for the man because, one, I knew there was one, but that was me asking for who's going to take responsibility for this person. I don't know her at all. I didn't know her I didn't even know her name right. So her friends had failed. If there wasn't a guy, the only other person who could have been offended by this proclamation was the mother hen that she came with, who is the best alternative. For every Hank Hill that's out there, there's a mother hen who's been waiting on the wings for a moment like this for her entire relationship with this group. Okay? And she is the person who will take responsibility. Like, she is the man in this relationship, absent a boyfriend or another guy friend. Who I could have talked to. Now, absent these characters meant now it's your responsibility, and I knew this, to make sure that this person doesn't hurt themselves, that get home safe, whatever. Call her an Uber. But you can't let that situation go on as is. Okay? So back to the story. So now she's mortified. She's trying to sit down. She's just indignant about the situation. She fell out of her chair, like this bar stool that she's trying to sit in. And she hit the ground, popped up and ran away. So her fiance moseys over, and I gotta be honest with you, he's one of the nicest dudes I've ever met. Okay, and I'm telling you, I told him what happened. He apologized, no big deal. And I said, "Are you gonna take care of that?" There she goes. And he looked at me like I was nuts. He said, "No, she can take care of herself." I looked at him and said, I don't think that's how marriage works. I was married. I had one child on the way. I certainly wouldn't have let her run off wasted, pregnant or not. But that's just an example of how two different guys with very different styles on this could still be men. Again, just we happen to put our skills in different areas. He dumped a lot of his skill points in charisma, and I went strength, constitution, and wisdom. He's a great guy. We drank all night, at multiple bars. He's one of those dudes you want to like. He and I have very different opinions on how to handle this, but he was a great example of just what we can turn into. He's a great father. His wife is actually super nice. I don't think that she remembers this situation, and maybe that's for the best. But even if she does, like, it hasn't affected us going forward. But this example is this story is also an example of how things can go extremely sideways. So manhood misapplied is like a shotgun pointed at your foot. It's crippling if handled improperly. Okay, now let's re-examine the situation and change a few of the minor details. Excuse me. Let's say I was rude to begin with. Now, I don't mean rude in the way that someone doesn't like shake hands or say thank you. I mean demeaning, like misogyny. Now, again, this show is not meant to tear women down, or and the view of this company is not that women are worse off or in any way they need to be taken down. We are complementary. We see the world in very different ways, and we react to those different things in extremely different ways. So men and women are very different, and we're never going to pretend otherwise. But this show was not meant to be misogynist, and we're certainly not meant to tear women down. But if I were to go up to this girl, like cocksure, flirty even, I mean, I don't know, like pick something sleazy and just stick that in your head, like some used car guy. And I mean, do you think I would have gotten the reaction I did? Of course not. You know, they'd see that as aggression rather than assertion. And it's very important to understand the difference between those. And I will do an entire episode, and hopefully multiple times, over the very difference between aggression and assertion. But if I had gone in this way, I'd have lost all credibility before the conversation even started. No one would have taken my request seriously. Like, where's the man responsible for this? Honey, it just doesn't work. And, you'd have her girlfriend, like, if you did this, like, you'd have her girlfriend suddenly jumping down your throat, defending this woman who just punched you, right? Like, that's how the world is. So that's how masculinity misapplied is going to be reacted to in this world. So let's do this properly. Let's do this in a way that allows for the best situation to happen. So let's look at this from another angle. Let's say I made the situation about this woman personal. Fast forward to the end. She punches you as hard as she can in the stomach. You're a strong man. It doesn't really hurt, but you're angry. You lose control, and suddenly you either advance, and now you're looming over this girl, making it obvious that she just punched someone physically capable of ending her. So even, if that had been a guy and you got punched in the stomach and you're now looming over the other dude, no one has a problem with it, right? It's kind of expected, right? And we'll get into some of that in a future episode. But this situation ends very differently when a woman's involved. Police are involved. Hey, you're the one who overreacted. How could you possibly have threatened a woman? It ends badly in every case. And not to mention, I would have been handled by the people at the bar, right? I was not like by a real man. Like I'm not the only one that was there. So I would have been handled. Like, that situation ends badly regardless of how how you try to get out of it. So let's go back. Scenario 3. Let's say she punches you, and instead of saying, so we're going to insert something at the end. So instead of saying, where's the man responsible for this? You're going to say, where's the man responsible for this? Anything. Now insert your favorite demeaning word for a woman. Okay. Where is the man responsible for this? Blank. Very not so subtle, but it's a key difference that I want to mention. So how I played this, I made my request about her inebriation. So drunk she's punching strangers. Replace her with a guy and it still holds. Like, punch me in the stomach. It's a pure truth. Who's responsible for this? So making the situation personal by addressing the person rather than the situation or condition that we're in is ultimately self-defeating. I coach people for a living. And when I'm coaching people managers, I always mention, keep things objective. The second it gets personal, they've won. You're in a union discussion. You're talking across the table to a guy who's clearly broken rules. The second it turns away from this is our policy, you broke it, and turns from it somehow into you're a bad person for having done this, they've won. Contract terminated, rip up the write up, it's no longer valid. And that's the way of real business out there. And it's the same, it's kind of the same way here in public. If we make things personal, all of a sudden it's about you, not about the situation at hand. Now, this situation goes to speak to pure truth. When you speak of pure truth, they listen. People listen. When you publicly defend your being of being a man and you do it properly, people listen. We start making waves. We start moving this culture in the right direction. I stood tall. I'm a big guy. I'm hard to miss. I laid down the law of nature, a pure truth, and people reacted with the respect that I had shown everybody by addressing the situation rather than the person. No one resisted. I didn't have to explain myself to anyone. You know, a battle for manhood was fought and won, and without victories like that, we will never win back ground, and we will continue to be mocked and emasculated by people who honestly couldn't tell you if they saw a real person, even if one was standing right in front of them. They don't want to see real men. They want to see toxic men because that's what they think men are. Heck, that's why I named this company North American Kings. You know, I didn't name it North American Princes or North American Men. I want to regain this mass ability for guys that we all know. Like, so for those guys that everyone sees, like, this is a man, we need to reclaim the ability to do that en masse across this country, across the world. There are 1,000 different styles, but we need to be striving towards whatever that image is of this noble, even regal guy that was so secure, that figure that's so secure in his purpose that he doesn't have to justify himself to anyone, and no one questions his right to whatever authority he wants. Now, he may just walk in and say, "Hey, quit being so noisy." Okay, sir. Right? Like, we just don't question that. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is our mission. This is the first episode of something near and dear to my heart. A lot of time and effort has gone into making things as solid as they are now, and that hasn't been without help. So before we continue on, I would love to thank some people. I first want to start with Becky Atkinson of Basically Digital, my friend and our website designer. She's put in a lot of time. She's squeezed our project into her schedule, and she's been a tremendous help with us launching on time. Without her, this would not have happened. Now, she's based in Winneconne, Wisconsin, and she was still able to design this remotely. She designed our website. She's hosting our website. She's launching it. And she's hooked us up with other professionals in the field that handled stuff that was outside of her wheelhouse. She's extremely professional, and she's offering services designed to help startups like myself get things rolling the way they need to be. Becky, I cannot thank you enough for what you've done for us. So thank you. I want to also give a shout out. Now, this is not a sponsor, and they made me say that. So Sweetwater is a retailer, and they are also an online. I use them online. They're located in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Sweetwater.com is a retail seller of audio equipment that I've been using professionally for a long while now. I say professionally as in the manufacturing world. Now, these guys have a great online presence, outstanding customer service, and an amazing catalog of equipment for musicians, podcasters, and manufacturing guys who need speakers that can be set up almost anywhere for trainings in places they never thought they'd be training in. Nick Reedy is our sales engineer, and he's been absolutely great. He's answered questions. He's reached out to confirm orders, shipping, and application, all remotely. Again, these are not sponsoring me. These guys are not a sponsor, but I cannot thank them enough for making this happen. Now, the reason I'm so excited about these guys and the reason I want to plug them right now is because I'm not an audiovisual guy. I've grown up in manufacturing, like turning a wrench. Putting this together required a lot of work, a lot of learning. And when it comes to my audio equipment, I've got a lot of questions. And when I do, I'm calling Nick because he's earned my trust and he can for you as well. So sweetwater.com, I cannot recommend them enough. Again, they are not a sponsor. And I'd like to thank my friends and family for helping me launch. They have fielded calls at all hours of the day, at night. They've given me feedback. They're giving me creative input. So you, my audience, will certainly hear about a couple of them here in the future. One of them today. But these men and women I've grown up with for years. They all believe in this mission as much as I do. So to everyone who's helped me out thus far, thank you very much. And finally, I would like to thank my wife, Kelly. Honey, thank you very much. This woman is the queen of my castle, and I mean that in the most genuine of senses. I'm off doing all this man stuff. I'm providing for the family. I'm trying to protect them. I'm trying to teach my sons while they're developing, and I'm disciplining them as well. But in the background, she's the person holding everything together. She is the glue to our family. And we have 3 children, all developing. She's still maintaining the household while I've worked my day job and launched this business. It's taken a lot of time and effort. I'm here early in the morning, late in the afternoon, like on weekends, and she is making it happen. Heck, I've been talking about the core of this project for years and just never seemed to have the time or make the funds up or collect the funds to do so. But it was actually Kelly who gave me the nudge to do this. So, gentlemen, I will be doing an episode or several about the power of a wife and queen. And I know from experience that there is no better support that you will ever receive in your entire life. And Kelly has been that for me. So, sweetie, thank you. Now, to the core of our episode. Now, the core of this episode is about men having a biological need to build. Men are builders. Well, why? This is something that we see constantly from men back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, like even today. Even some of those STEM type careers largely revolve around men being builders, or men creating things, or men repairing, or men getting their hands on things. And I want to ask the question, why? This goes to a case that men are biologically or even divinely driven to do a certain thing. And regardless of the reason, it's something what needs to be acknowledged, one, but two, we need to understand ourselves, understand why at our core that this is a behavior, because the behavior itself is not the cause. The behavior is a thing we do reacting to something else. So we are expected as men, we are expected to build, fix, repair, and replace things. We are the multi-tool of the animal kingdom, right? And that's a cool thing. I mean, it really is. But let's distill this. Let's get deep. Let's try to examine why this is a thing. So, distillation time. I'm going to try to Tarantino this a little bit. Now, first off, I don't know if I've just aged myself. I'm not sure if I've been in child hibernation for the past 4 years. So my pop culture references they're not where they need to be. So if anybody does have feedback on this or that reference or anything else, please email me at podcast@NorthAmericanKings.com and let me know. So for those who don't know, like kids or people just haven't seen his work, Quentin Tarantino was a brilliant director. Now, politics and personality stuff aside, I think he is an amazing talent. Like, we cannot take that from him. He has developed this crazy plot cycle in some of his movies. And that is, he'll start at or near the end of the actual timeline of the story, and then they'll go back and kind of work their way up to it. So I'm going to kind of do that here. If you guys need a movie reference where this is a perfectly played out, Reservoir Dogs is a great classic movie where that's shown off in a great way. So, distillation. Why do men have a biological, I assume it's biological, but why do we have a need to make things and build? Cardinal responsibility number 1, to provide. Let's distill it down. We are providing things when we build things. We might be providing it for ourselves. Great, we're still providing. And it's a bit more complicated than that, but the point is simple to say and it's complex to teach. I I always like to start with the why. So if you do not understand or convey the why in strong enough terms, your message will fail. This goes for coachings in business. This is in every conversation with my wife. You might get into a conversation with your wife about the infamous water glass. The water glass that you leave on the counter every day because you might need it. She does not understand why you do that. Like, why must you impose this dirty glass in her spotless kitchen? But if you don't address the why, then you're just a jerk. Like, she will not budge. You address the why. She might begrudgingly allow that to exist. Okay? So I'm going to truly recommend that we address the why. Like in every case, if you guys go into work tomorrow and look at business and like you start addressing the why with your people or with your boss or whoever, I did this for this reason, this is the why behind all this, again, your communication will be that much stronger. So for us, let's go back to as cavemen, and I don't mean the insurance ones. I'm talking like caveman. What were we doing? Just beginning to shake off the biological needs. Like, what were we? Hunters, providers. We didn't have anyone to build things for us. We had to do that ourselves. And if we couldn't, we died. We didn't mate. Like, no one wanted to be with that cave guy who couldn't find a good cave, who couldn't hunt. It wasn't going to work that way. Like, it's cliche, but necessity is the mother of invention. We needed things and we made them. So today, women still put on makeup and men still have to provide stuff. It's the way of it. Now, hold it. Hold your emotional reaction. Anybody's listening who does not believe that that's the way it should be. It is, though. We humans are the only species on the planet where the female is prettier than the dude. Look at any bird out there. It's proof. Like I don't know that there's a huge biological difference between a male bird and a female bird. Like, they can provide and do stuff by themselves. Like, that female bird doesn't need that male bird, but for some reason, then that's why that bird, that dude, that cardinal is beautiful. Okay, colorful, vibrant red. He doesn't care that enemy or that other birds can see him. Like, it's something he has to deal with. Okay, so like, this is a law of nature. Like, it is out there. It's there for a reason. And regardless of you agree with this or not, like, that's where we're at. So another example is, why do women dig rich guys? Outside of the very, very superficial stuff, it's because they can provide. They have proven it. Now, I made this joke to my wife, and it's very, very adjacent to this, but I still think this holds. I still shave with a straight razor. Not a shavette, I like not one of those straight razors where you replace the blade so you don't have to sharpen. I sharpen this myself. And we were talking about it. My wife said, how's it feel to effectively take a sword to your skin every few nights? And I got to tell you, it's awesome. But with this awesome beard of mine, I don't, the full experience of shaving my face completely with shave, I'd be like, it's still worth it, but it's nevertheless a little less awesome if I'm using just your Bic razor or something from, or something from an online source that you might have. Like, it's just a little less awesome, but I still like to shave. But I thought of how much money a straight razor was for me, and I thought back to when that particular type of razor was actually necessary to shave. Like back well before, the big name brands started selling 5 blades and all this other stuff. That got me thinking, were beards ever a sign that someone was poor? And I mean like an unkempt beard, like beards all down up here, just like unkempt and all over the place. Then I thought, was clean shaved face ever a sign of wealth, or was that, and distilled, was that a sign that, or a style developed because it proved that that man could provide for himself, right? Like they had to have a very well kept and very sharp blade to shave. It had to have a mirror and shaving soap of some kind, or they had all that stuff, and then they'd have to either shave their face or have a guy do it for them, right? So in thinking about this, I had to articulate all this out loud. I'm like, the fact that we have all this stuff readily at our hands is rather impressive. But I wonder if that was a sign that a guy could provide himself. Just shaved his face. Oh yeah, you can see all of it. Why? Because I can. Okay. To be honest with you, that's another example of why Warlord Gold is a thing that we'll talk about in a couple episodes. Like, why does gold hold its value? Well, I've got a theory, but back when men weren't being badgered for being men, like those people who are like 30, 35 and older, what did all of those studs have? They all had a nice car. That proved what? That they could provide by either their hands or their wallet. And the best part of that is that attracted other men to hang out with those guys. And you'd see on a Friday afternoon, you'd see a bunch of guys working on a hot rod. Like 10 of them, all standing either drinking or having fun, but they were all like, they were doing that, providing in and amongst themselves even. And that is a crazy thing to think about. And it shows that when we do practice these things and we practice that show of providing, it doesn't just affect us. Like part of our mission as a company right now is that by strengthening men, we will be ultimately strengthening everybody else around us. So if we've got one alpha dude with this hot rod Mustang that's fixing it on his own, well, he's attracting other men to him, and he's teaching those other men to him. So he's fulfilling not just the first cardinal responsibility, he's fixing the third. He's fulfilling the third too. So it's equally as beneficial to teach and to bring other men up as a man. It's just equally as fulfilling as it is if you're practicing that by yourself. So a study done back in 2008 titled, "Even in Virtual Environments, Women Shop and Men Build, a Social Role Perspective on Second Life," is a great example of this. So this is a University of Alabama study done by Rosanna Guanango, Nicole Muscanel, Bradley Oakdye, Nancy Burke, and Thomas Ward. And they took several participants and they had them participate in a simulated life experience like Sims. And I'm paraphrasing for the sake of time, but and the link for this study will actually be in the episode description of this podcast. In this study, they found significant differences in the play style of both male and female subjects. Drum roll, please. Men were builders and women were caregivers. Boom, mic drop. Thank you for your time. No, I think it goes deeper than that. In the study, they predicted this, and but it's still significant, and it references some older studies from back in the 70s. When men were playing, men were significantly more interested in building and working on land that they owned. So not just working. So these people wouldn't just go into their job and do like a paper thing, and like we saw on The Office, or Dwight was playing this game and he was a paper salesman in the game, but that's not what he didn't just go in there just to do his own thing. When in this study showed that men preferred working on land that they owned in the game, like theirs. They were providing that for themselves or whoever. Where the women were more interested in the transactional experience, the shopping, the social aspect of meeting new people. And they also found that women, and this is, the data shows it, women like trying on new things. I have to laugh. I could not, I really didn't want to believe it when I saw it, because even then I'm like, man, like it's a stereotype, and it does, but women in this study proved that they would switch on different clothes and different skins, and they were changing up their character and how they looked. They wanted to present themselves in the way that they wanted. So check it out. The link is in the description of the podcast here if you guys want to read that study at length. Now, the best men, like I mentioned, find joy in fulfilling these roles, provide, protect, teach, and discipline. And it's easy to find yourself while you're just even going through the motions of these. You know, that and helping others do so. I mentioned earlier, like teaching other men how to be more capable of doing these cardinal 4 responsibilities can be just as rewarding. And that's the case for fatherhood that I will bring up at a later date. One of my fraternity brothers, Alex Clark, and you will hear from Clark. He's one of the best gentlemen I've ever had the pleasure of meeting in my entire life to date. He's a better person than me. This guy is awesome. But he was providing for me. So I was transitioning. I was moving from one state to another. My pregnant wife was left in Louisville, Kentucky, and I was moving up to Wisconsin, and he was providing me shelter. He was providing me a place to stay, and that's just, it was an imposition on him and his wife, and I really appreciate it. And while they were doing so, Clark had some car trouble. Clark calls me. He says, "I'm at the dealer shop. My Nissan has busted." And he had this Nissan Xterra that we drove around all through college. God, I miss and love this car, but it was at the shop and he couldn't fix it out. So the dealer is saying, "Hey, it's your starter. It's going to cost $400 for us to fix this." And $400 is still a lot of money to a lot of people. It's still a lot of money to me. It's still a lot of money to Clark. So he's like, he's devastated. He's like, "Why? How am I going to do this, man? $400. I don't want to spend it. Oh my God, no." So having the skills that I do, I say over the phone, Clark, with maybe $100 worth of tools and $20 worth of tools and maybe $100 worth of part, we can change that in your garage tonight with a little bit of sweat equity. So sure enough, like Clark's on it. So we get the car towed back to his place, and throughout the night, we fixed his car. I showed Clark how to do that job, and the pictures speak for themselves, where you could see covered in oil or grease or old dust and all that stuff that when you get into a car, like even not touching the oil system, like we were covered in this stuff. Clark was thrilled. He learned something new. He now can provide for himself, and he did it for so much cheaper than it would have been, again, $400 versus like $100. And I kept the tools, so I spent the $20 on just the tools. Like, he spent a quarter of what he was going to, and thereby providing for his family in a way that said, "Hey, like, I didn't have to spend this much. I spent just this little bit to do this great thing that we needed. He needed the car." So I say that to tell you that there's great joy to be found in teaching people how to do these things and in the process of doing these things. And also showcase the downside of when we can't, right? The downside of not being able to build or not being able to provide will crop up everywhere. And part of the reason why this mission of ours is so important is if you see a guy who's not fulfilling, he's not whole in his soul, he's not fulfilling something, he feels incomplete, you can see that. It will not only affect him, it will affect everyone around him. Our mission says that very clearly. By strengthening men, we will bring everyone up. Everyone will rise with us. So that's the point of this being so critical. And I say that because you can see it if it's not present. Now, even if you have a guy who's not very social, he doesn't affect too many people around him, you can still see in him that absence of those traditional male traits. It's part of it. And it's manifesting in different ways, and he's not fulfilling himself in ways that he maybe wants. So our job is to reach out to those people and say, "Hey, how can we help you?" But when we're not able to, especially in an instant, it's very devastating. And all you have to do this is go tell a father anywhere. It does not matter if his wife's working or is not. You just lost your job. What will he experience? Like, what emotions were you going to, or is he going to go through? Joy? No, I don't think so. It's panic, emasculation, fear, right? And in particular, I mean, God, I mean, I've been through that situation myself. It's terrifying, to see, and it's happened to me multiple times. It happens, through different situations in life. It happens. It's devastating. And I've been fortunate enough to be around other men that help me understand that and help prop me up so that I could get through that. Because again, we're going to feel that. We can't get around it. We can't avoid those feelings. We can fortify ourselves, and that's why this is called the training ground. We can fortify ourselves to get through the situation, and we know now how to get through it expediently. So in particular, I hate those situations. I avoid them like crazy. In particular, when I'm handed an opportunity to emasculate a guy, so to actively take him down, I avoid it like the plague. Now, women, sometimes you emasculate men on accident. Sometimes you do it on purpose. Now, for the women who do it on purpose, you're evil, and that's my opinion. That's the opinion of this company, so awful. But when you do it on accident, it happens. Like, sometimes you just do not understand some of these things that we're talking about and how they affect us. Like, we see the world in different ways. But in particular, sometimes men are handed opportunities to actively push people down. I mean, it's something that I'm not going to tell you guys what to do very often. Like, I'm not going to have a lot of asks. I'm going to say, hey, this is the information. I recommend you do this. I'm telling you to do. If you get an opportunity to emasculate a guy, men, avoid this like the plague. Do not do this. Okay? You will be better off for it. Personally in yourselves, and that other man will be better off for it as well. So this is a situation. I was at dinner with an entire workforce that I was with, and it was a small team, a small retail team, and it was husbands, wives, everybody was there. And one of my coworkers looks at me and says, "Glenn, I need some car work done." And she knew I was kind of a gearhead. And she turns when her husband's like right there, like right next to me, or right down at the end of the table, and she's next to him. He's drinking wine. She turns to me and says, "Hey, I need my brakes done. Would you be able to do that for me?" And I mean, I'm sitting next to my wife, one, but two, I'm looking right through her at her husband. I'm like, your husband is right there. And that's what I said out loud. I'm like, he's right there. No, I can't. Like, that's his job. Because I didn't truly process what it is to not have that. But also, just to me, the gall. I didn't understand how he could be cool with her effectively outsourcing his job as a man to somebody right in front of him. I just couldn't do it. And even though his next words were, "Dude, I don't do cars." I couldn't. Even though he was giving me his permission, I felt like okay, now he knows. He's like, I'm gonna come over and do his manly duty, and he's gonna sit there in the corner and watch me do it. No, I'm not gonna fix your car, bud. I'm not gonna fix your wife's car. Absolutely not. So I'm encouraging everyone, start building stuff. Men, start building stuff, start getting your hands on stuff, but more so, project that you can provide. Do this if you're trying to attract that girl that you've had your eye on for a while. If you're trying to flirt with your wife, that's what taking her out to a nice dinner does. It shows that, one, that you appreciate it, but on a core base that you're showing her that you not only can, but you want to provide for her, and she's going to love that. So I encourage everyone, get on board, try doing this. We're going to break now and go to a special guest, and we'll be right back. Thank you very much. So today we've been discussing the need for men to build things, and I have a special guest, someone who's given me some creative input, who's been a moral support for me for years. He's probably the oldest person I still have a relationship with over the course of this life here, and this gentleman has actually been the man counterpart to myself, especially certainly in times, in some of those times where I wasn't fulfilling some of those responsibilities on my own. I want to thank this guest for showing up, Scott Fisher. Thank you very much for joining me today. How are you?
Good, good. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So Scott, as soon as this episode came up, I'm looking at the subject matter, building things and having a need for that. I think you and I personally have been on some crazy builds before. There have been some situations where you and I had to kind of like roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty and kind of figure some things out. And you've been doing that for far longer, maybe than even I have. As soon as this episode came up, I thought, man, I got to call Scott. So thank you very much for coming on. A little bit of history, just so you know, the audience. Scott is one of my fraternity brothers. I've known Scott since high school, though we weren't really, I would say, friends until we got to college and just kind of bumped into each other again. But Scott and I've got a lot of interest. We've got a lot of history, and through that, we've kind of discovered some of these traditional masculine responsibilities and traits and moral values along the way. And of course, it made him a prime person to want to discuss this with. So, Scott, I kind of wanted to kind of let you take the reins for a second. Like, give us a little history. I know we've talked a lot about traditional male values. Like, how have you been affected by those, or how have you come up on the subject in your personal experience?
It's definitely a broad topic, but I guess I have somewhat traditional values. I come from a blue collar family where my dad's a machinist and my brother's an electrician. So kind of a background in we don't hire, people to fix our things and we can fix anything ourselves type of a upbringing. So that I did for a career. I am more white collar, but get involved in pretty much building things. So I have two business degrees, and I do purchasing for a major manufacturer, and I'm in charge of hydraulic components. So I get into the tools that make our products quite a bit. So uh, building things in that way. Um, consider myself pretty handy, I guess, but I think some of what we'll maybe get into today also includes just kind of like building up a lifestyle or building up a career and things like that, building a network.
So,
So,
so back when we were in college, I mean, even starting out, like we were sharing an apartment, and one of the job that Scott and I kind of started at. I mean, I was a furniture repair guy, and Scott was was an actual mechanic, and I mean, I remember you coming in like in your mechanic's gear, just ready to rock school or kill homework, and I think those principles of fixing stuff and being able to provide for others, the skill again. So we had those jobs because other people couldn't or wouldn't do it, right? Fixing stuff or fixing furniture or fixing cars. We weren't able to, we were providing something that somebody else couldn't provide. But I mean, did it start? I mean, you mentioned earlier that your dad was a machinist. Like you got into some crazy builds in high school and even through college. I mean, I remember a time where I didn't know how to fix some stuff. We had a truck that was this little garbage truck, and we're in the middle of the winter in Scott's garage at some apartment. So it was a single cell garage, and we spent what 4 or 5 hours trying to tear this engine apart. Like, and you were the person that I had to go to for some of that, Scott. Like, so one, thank you, but two, I mean, how early did that start for you? Like, who's your first example of where you've got some of those skills?
yeah, I guess I don't know that I can think back to a specific example, but or like a first, but I mean, we did things like finishing basements, or uh, we built a cabin on our hunting property and things like that. And then, just my dad having, access to machinery to, machine anything out of metal or weld things or whatnot. It was pretty much wide open. We could do absolutely anything. Carpentry is pretty easy compared to machining things, relatively. So there pretty much wasn't anything, plumbing, electrical, carpentry, machining, welding, you name it, it really could be done. So, looking at the world through that lens, I mean, it's pretty awesome, pretty empowering that, you can understand pretty much anything mechanical or electrical. And so you kind of know, even if you have to hire something out, what it all entails. You can, kind of get an idea of what things should cost. And I guess it's just a great feeling to not be super helpless and having to rely on, what people tell you, you know.
So have you gotten into any recent builds? I know, I just got done, tore the transmission out of my car because that needed a new clutch and stuff like that. So I know we get into some recent stuff. There's some recent projects that you've gotten in, or are there any examples of where you've had to do this and you've taught other people some skills that you had so that they could provide for themselves?
Yeah, I guess I have two major projects going on, one personal, one professional. Like personally, so we're building the first house that we're actually having built. So I've really gotten into the weeds on roof lines and ceiling lines and rooms and layouts, and really future proofing where different utilities and HVAC and plumbing and things are going in the basement that I intend on finishing myself. So I've been very involved in kind of the design side, and then I'm looking forward to doing the build side, you know, down the road. And then professionally, I have this assembly line. So we own a lot of our tooling that makes our products. So we actually own entire assembly lines at another major company to make the hydraulic trim systems in our outboard engines. And I'm doing a $2 million line replacement right now, where it's like 65 different assembly stations, and I need to like thoroughly vet, what's the function of this? Does this really need to be replaced? What's the lifespan of it? All that stuff. So it's pretty technical, maybe not super hands-on, but definitely kind of scratches this building itch, I guess.
Right. Well, and one thing that I've always been impressed with about your career, again, you mentioned being somewhat white collar, but even having these skills, it seems that you've been able to bridge some gaps with the more technical sides of your operation, and sort of kind of foster that relationship. And you mentioned that even though you're not an engineer, that you're vetting engineering processes, even from your vantage point. Have there been any? I know you're expecting your first. I don't think I have had the opportunity to tell you congratulations, like personally. So congratulations, brother.
Thank you.
So how is that? How has that component affected how you feel about providing or even this house build?
Yeah, so it's been a little bit of a leap of faith. So the housing market's pretty crazy right now, and I'm almost 32, and so is my wife, and we got married last late August, and we're really just kind of looking to get started. I kind of wanted to wait till we figured out the house situation, and she really did not. So I kind of took that leap of faith, but then once we became pregnant, that kind of changes your perspective. And how do you want to go about things? Like, do you really want to have to get into bidding wars with on houses with an emotional pregnant wife, or would you rather just spend the money and build your dream house and know that it's going to be done right before the baby comes, and kind of lock it in that way? And that's what we decided to do. So I guess that was the perspective change, I guess, of like needing to control that, just knowing how emotional that would get with a pregnant wife feeling pressured to make a decision. So,
And can I ask about your emotions? Have they changed? I know we keep them deep, deep, deep down there, but I know when my children were coming about, and I felt somewhat like of a kind of like a profound, almost a, and I don't really know how to describe it, but again, I felt a weight almost. Are you going through that right now, especially with the big house build, and you're setting them up with the infrastructure for the first couple years of their life, or I guess for the first few decades if you're going to live there forever. But
for me, it's almost more of a relief, really. Like, I spent my 20s, dating all the wrong women, but the thing that I did right was, building up my career, getting my finances in order, investing wisely, saving, so like this is the purpose of that 10 years of planning, was to do this, when I found the right woman. And, I'm very proud of the fact that I didn't kind of screw around when I did find, the right woman. And so this is just, kind of fulfilling what I was planning on doing. And, you know, children are extremely expensive and all that. So I guess it's kind of gotten me, the loss of control of certain things has gotten me kind of over my worrying about the money a bit too much complex, like
right,
a lot of things are out of your control when you get pregnant. Like a good friend of mine just found out that their child that's due in June is going to have cleft palate, right? So like
okay,
something like that could hit you, right? So I
yeah.
guess I guess I've really just kind of leaned into the fact that there's a loss of control in some things, and then I had more energy for the things that I can do. So for me, it's been good. It hasn't. I guess that maybe the magnitude of it hasn't quite hit me yet. So
Now it might take a little while. I'll be honest with you, gentlemen. Now this may happen if you guys are listening. Like, so when my first child came, I felt nothing. Well, and I felt broken for it, but I didn't really feel like a huge connection until we got home, which is a story for another time. But like the connection, eventually gets there. But so I didn't really feel the weight of all that, or maybe it was overload and I felt the weight of everything and just didn't know how to process that. But so I think some of that will come. I know you and I have talked about dating with purpose over the course of 1,000 conversations. But can you talk about that and with respect to your drive to be a provider, because you've been a provider for me personally, since I've met you, and I know you've tried to do that in various ways throughout your entire personal career. But can you speak on that just a little bit?
yeah, I guess I did a lot of screwing around in my 20s and dating the wrong women, and just I always like wanted to get married and have a family, but in reality, I probably wasn't actually ready for it. So I think everyone just needs to be more honest with themselves about what they're doing, right? So like if you're just dating for fun when you're younger, so be it, but that, should be clear and purposeful that, this isn't a super serious relationship. You don't really see it going anywhere. That, you should be able to say that to whoever you're dating. And then if you actually do want to, settle down and get married, well, you should be able to say that to the other person and not have it be like have them running for the hills,
Yeah.
like, and I mean, that's what I saw with you and Kelly too. Like your whole shtick was, you wanted to be the dad and, maybe have a stay at home wife and just like be the man and like be the father and like that, like a whole almost like a machismo thing. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And I always respected that a lot, and the fact that you didn't need to date her for 5 years before you were ready to make a commitment and stuff. I think that's a really good sign. Like this indecisive date 'em forever. You're not sure whether or not what you want out of it. I think that's a big problem in society right now, in my opinion. And I think you could do a lot more if you actually just thought about what you wanted and kind of went with it.
Well,
So
well, I think part of it, I think, and I'm not saying I ever dated perfectly either. I mean, I always courted women in the wrong way or something. But one thing I always noticed about your relationships is that you were always a very staunch provider, regardless of the woman, and I know we dated the wrong ones by both of us, but um, you always seemed to, we always tried to be those guys regardless of the quality of the relationship. So I remember one of your more hallmark relationships through college, like you were always the provider, like regardless of the situation, whether or not that was the best thing, that if you guys were going in the same direction. And I know I kind of did that with Kelly at the very end, and she just happened to be the one that was down to for that, which I think was the benefit there. Um, but I've always noticed with you, for in particular, like you have always been a provider for those around you as well. Not just dating, but for other guys. Even people who were not Scott Fisher fans, and I met them and I've talked to them, in some of our circles, but not no one could take that away from you, that you were always down to help anybody else. I mean, I remember one time I got into a financial thing and had to get up to a bank. That was probably a 15-minute drive for us. Now in college, just so our viewers know, like the bank I had to go to was in like another city. And Scott heard I needed help, looked at me, like snapped his fingers and said, "Hey, let's go. I've got a car. Let's go." And like marched probably faster than I did right out of the union. It's like, we're going to go handle this immediately. And I was able to like avoid a financial issue that I was going through. So, and because I got to the bank in time. So you've always been that person. Or do you have any examples of you like being that guy that still like, hey, I got a bro down the road that needs help with this. I'll be there.
yeah, I mean, in my first house, I took numerous people in that needed a place to stay. I think it was like 5 or 6 over 6 years,
Yeah.
and
And I was one of them, just so everybody knows.
and I've lent some halfway significant amounts of money to people that got themselves in a spot and whatnot. And I guess those are some of the things that I'm probably more proud of some of those situations than like my master's degree or something like that, because there's limited opportunities that come along to really prove the strength of a relationship, right?
Yeah.
And so like taking advantage of those, uh, like that builds lifelong friendships, and like your network of the quality of the people that you surround yourself with, I think is huge. It's like you surround yourself with driven people that have lofty goals and good morals and things like that, that kind of sets the bar or raises the bar for you, versus if you stay in a circle of people doing destructive things, that also is going to most likely set the trajectory of your life too.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today. I appreciate you being on the inaugural episode of North American Kings podcast, and thank you very much for all the support you've given me over the years, brother. It has gotten me where I am today, so thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Glad to be here. And I think like this is a message that people need to hear, really, that men need to hear in this day and age, like positive aspects of masculinity and things like that. It's not a common message, but an important message right now.
So, gentlemen, ladies, boys, girls, thank you very much for joining us today. We've got on the line Scott Fisher. We've just been talking about building, and men's need to do that. I really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us today. And just know that there are other men out there. Like, where you are not alone. There are people in your circles that do feel this way. So publicly espouse these traits. Let's take the fight tactfully and with purpose. Let's take it out to the streets. Let's change our culture a little bit. I will see you guys later. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your